Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Sher natan et kol darkav, Lemo Yisrael kehetav niyot, Lekol hadevarim, Shebashamayim. Who's given all of his ways to his people Israel, as pictures of all things heavenly. You may be seated. I have a big teaching, but there's few slides. But the reason it's such a big teaching is because all we're going to study is what one rabbi said in one statement in the it's not in the Talmud, it's in the Midrash. One statement that he made. And all we're going to do is scratch the surface of it. I could really teach on it for hours and hours. And it's I want you to think about this. One rabbi made one statement, and he did it off the top of his head. And you're going to see all the scriptures that he quoted without quoting like it's in 1 Samuel 2 or whatever, without saying the address of it. He just rattled them off like it was nothing. And that's basically what we're going to be studying today. But first we're going to look at the passage that all this is based on. In the Torah portion, Vayashev, that means and he dwelt, or he sat, literally. Genesis 37. The name of the teaching is Jacob like Joseph like Yeshua. I wanted to say like Jesus because it was alliterative. Jacob like Joseph like Jesus. I just thought it sounded cool, but can't do that.
Yacov like Yoseph like Yeshua.
There you go. Yacov like Yoseph like Yeshua. Yeah, that's what I should have done. You're smarter than I am. All right. I got one, thank you. These are the Toldot generations. Now, there's been a Torah portion that we came across 2 weeks ago. And the name of the Torah portion was Toldot, means generations. There's the generations of Abraham, the generations of Isaac, the generations of Ishmael, the generations of Esau, the generations now of Jacob. But look what it says. It doesn't say these are the generations of Jacob, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, etc. It says these are the generations of Jacob, Joseph, which is strange. And there's many things written about this by the rabbis because it's so strange. It shouldn't say these are the generations of Jacob, Joseph, but it does. Joseph, 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was a youth, along with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Yoseph more than all his sons, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a multicolored, or pasim, means divided up, tunic. And his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, and they hated him and could not speak to him on friendly terms. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. Now, you need to know about Shechem. Shechem, or Shechem, Shechem is right smack in the middle of the land of Israel. Geographically, it's right smack in the middle. And it is, there's two mountains. It's in a valley. On one side is a mountain, the other side is a mountain. Mount Gerizim on the right and Mount Ebal on the left. And when they went into the land, when they're going to go into the land, God said, write the Torah and put it on Mount Ebal. That's evil. It's easy to remember. It's the mountain where the curses were spoken. Just realized I'm looking over this thing. So there was Mount Ebal, where 6 of the tribe leaders spoke the curses, and then Mount Gerizim on the right, where 6 of the tribe's leaders spoke the blessings. God said, write the Torah on big giant limestones that are coated with lime on Mount Ebal. That's the curse. Write the Torah on the cursed side. So that's going to be in the future at Shechem. Then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said to Yoseph, are your brothers not pasturing in Shechem? Come, and I will send you to them. And he said, I will go. That's a big deal. He didn't have to go. But he listens to his father, and he says, okay, I'll go. To these people that hate him. He's going into the ghetto. He's not going to his brothers, his happy time brothers. They hate him. And he says, yeah, I'll go. Then he said, go now and see about the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flock, and bring word back to me. So he came to Shechem, and now look at this. A man found him, and he was wandering. Joseph was wandering in the field. It's strange. He's just kind of wandering around. It is the word wandering in the field. And the man asked him, what are you looking for? And he said, I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they pasture. Then the man said, they have moved from here, because I heard them say, let's go to Dotan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dotan. Now, the word dot or dot, you should recognize that. What is the word dot?
Law.
The curse of the law. So Joseph, who's sent by his father, goes to these people that want to kill him. They don't like him. They hate him, to find out how they're doing. And he finds them in the curse of the law. And who are they? The sons of Israel. Isn't that amazing? That's where he finds them. Well, come on. When they saw him from a distance, and before he came closer to them, they plotted against him to put him to death. Now, this is a picture of looking into the future, like before Yeshua showed up 2,000 years ago to Israel. Before that, Israel was already plotting and planning how to kill the Messiah. Because they're looking, before he even got to them, they're trying to figure out how they can get rid of this righteousness. They plotted against him to put him to death. Let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And we'll say a vicious animal ate him. Then we will see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben heard and rescued him out of their hands. That's a good one for Reuben. Reuben actually did something good here. He didn't do much good. That's why I'm saying it. He did bad, a lot of bad. But here he does something good. Reuben heard and rescued him out of their hands and said, let's not take his life. Then Reuben said to them, don't shed blood. Throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, but don't lay your hands on him. So it came about when Yoseph reached his brothers that they stripped Yoseph of his multicolored tunic that was on him, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty without any water in it. I just want to mention one thing about the multicolored tunic. This was the garment, and you can verify this in Jewish writings. This was the garment that God made for Adam. And it got passed down to Abraham. Abraham gave it to Isaac. Isaac gave it to Jacob, and Jacob gave it to now Yoseph. This is the garment that was made by God made it for Adam. But it had been stolen by Nimrod. And then later on, it was stolen by Esau. On the day that Isaac was going to bless Jacob and Esau, Esau said, I'm going to go hunt. He wasn't hunting for animals, he was hunting for men. And by the way, he was only 15 years old. The boys were only 15. And he goes out to hunt and to kill Nimrod. Now, this is what the rabbis say, the sages say. I'm putting up my hand to go, you don't have to believe this if you don't want to. But the picture is absolutely correct. So Esau goes and hunts down Nimrod, kills him, and takes this multicolored garment that was created by God because he thought it would give him power. And later on, Jacob got it and gave it to his son, Yoseph. Yes?
In verse 3, it said Yacov made it.
No, it doesn't say made. It says, it's not the word bara, created. So it's not, let's see, how do the rabbis put it? He made it a gift.
Oh, okay.
That's how they say it. He made it a gift. They go into that word a lot because people say, well, it says he made it. No, he didn't make it. He made it a gift. Yeah. So this is a big deal that now the boys have it. Now the boys have it that hate Yosef. Then they sat down to eat a meal. This is after they throw him in the pit to kill him. They're throwing him in the pit to kill him. You know, at least they didn't murder him and shed blood, but they're not throwing him in the pit like gently, like, here, Yosef, we're going to save your life. They're throwing him in an empty pit with snakes and scorpions in it to kill him. So, right after they do that, they sat down to eat a meal. Isn't that hard-hearted? That's cold. Sat down to eat a meal. But as they raised their eyes and looked, behold, a caravan of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilad, with their camels carrying laudanum, resin, balsam, myrrh, on their way to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him because he's their brother. So now Judah sort of saves his life. Who was coming? Ishmaelites. But then it switches on us and says, his brothers listened to him. Then some Midianite traders passed by. So who's going to get Joseph, the Ishmaelites or the Midianites? They're not the same people. They're both there, but the Midianites end up getting him. Then some Midianite traders passed by, so they lifted Joseph out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites. But now the Ishmaelites got him. But then later on it tells us the Midianites sold him in Egypt. So who was he sold to? Ishmaelites or Midianites? Yes. The answer is yes. For 20 pieces of silver. So they brought Yosef into Egypt, whoever they is, Midianites and Ishmaelites. Now Reuben returned to the pit, and look, Yosef wasn't in the pit. So he tore his garments and he freaks out. He returned to his brothers and said, the boy's not there. As for me, where am I to go? So they took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a male goat, and dipped the tunic in the blood. And again, this is the garment that God made for Adam, the first man who sinned. And now here's Yosef. They've taken it off of him. He's a picture of the Messiah, and they've dipped it in blood to act like he was murdered, ripped to shreds by an animal. They're lying. They dipped the tunic in blood, and they sent the multicolored tunic and brought it to their father and said, we found this, please examine. Is it your son's tunic or not? So he examined it and said, it is my son's tunic. A vicious animal has devoured him. Yosef has surely been torn to pieces. So Jacob tore his clothes, put on a sackcloth over his waist, and mourned for his son many days. Then all of his sons and daughters, plural, and I'm not going to explain that to you right now, because where did these daughters come from all of a sudden? All we know about is one, Dinah. But now there's many. There's several. So all of his sons and daughters, and all of them, the whole house, we're talking about 100 people, get up and try to get him to get up off the floor, off sitting Shiva, on a low stool on the floor, covered in sackcloth and ashes, and he tells them, stop trying to comfort me. Knock it off. And he won't do it. He won't get up. Surely I will go down to Sheol in mourning for my son. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, look, the Midianites sold him in Egypt. I thought the Ishmaelites had him. Now it's back to the Midianites. The Midianites sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, Pharaoh's officer, the captain of the bodyguard. All right, so we're back to the Torah portion. We're only going to look at one verse, the whole teaching. This verse. These are the Toledot of Jacob, Joseph. That's all we're going to look at. Just those words. Ele Toledot Yacov, Yosef. And this gives the rabbis like a field to play football on. For pages and pages and pages, they talk about these four little words. Ele Toledot Yacov, Yosef. And so one of the rabbis, very simple guy, very down-to-earth, simple guy, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman said, The text shouldn't say these are the generations Yacov, Yoseph. Rather, these are the generations Yacov, Reuben, because that was Yaakov's firstborn, yeah? So why does it go all the way down 11 kids to Yosef? Why is it like this? To teach us all that happened to this one, Jacob, happened to that one, Joseph. And this is all I'm going to teach on today. The words of this simple guy, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman. This guy quoted 50 verses like this, off the top of his head from the passage. He looked at the passage and went, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that, look at Yosef, look at Jacob, look at Yosef, look at Jacob, look at Yosef, look at Jacob, look at Yosef, over and over and over and over. You've never seen a Christian do this ever in your life. And these guys did it off the top of their head, and then somebody recorded it, which is even just as weird, actually. You've never seen this in your life. Now, these are my words. Esau gave up the blessing of the Bikur, the firstborn. It passed to Jacob, his brother. Reuben gave up the blessing of the Bikur, and it passed to his brother, Yosef. Yosef was the firstborn of the other wife, the one that Jacob wanted, the one that he loved. Reuben was the firstborn of Leah, the one that Jacob didn't love. But Yosef was the firstborn of the other wife. And so it's not really passing down 11 kids, it's jumping to another wife, a firstborn of another wife. Genesis 35 says this. This is awful. This is awful. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond the tower of the flock. That's Migdal Eder. And it came about while Israel was living in that land. Living in what land? Migdal Eder. It's right near Bethlehem. Listen to this. Migdal Eder is like a boundary marker for where you can get a sheep for Passover. And that's where he was. In that land, he was living in that land, that Reuben went and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah. He slept with his mother, stepmother, sort of. Stepmother, I don't even know what you'd call that. She's not related by birth, but she's in the house. Oh, that's not cool. Sister wife, thank you. His sister wife. Then he slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, his mom. And Israel heard it. Now there were 12 sons of Jacob. It doesn't say anything about it. All it says was, Jacob heard. No, these are the 12 sons of Jacob. That's all it says. So it lets it sit there in the background waiting for us. Now look at this. I have 3 pages of these. See all these little dashes? Every one of these is something that Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman said. I've separated them out and given the scriptures and some explanation. He didn't. He just said them. And then it was recorded. The text shouldn't say these are the generations of Yacov, Yosef. They should say these are the generations of Yaakov, Reuben. Why is it like this? Why is the Bible like this? Why is the Torah saying this? Why? To teach us that everything that happened to this one happened to that one. He is a picture. Jacob is a picture of Yosef. We know that Yosef is a picture of Yeshua. Therefore, Jacob is a picture of Yeshua. Does that make sense? So why isn't he in the body of Messiah? Why isn't Jacob, the Jew, the ultimate Jew, Jacob? I don't know if you know that he's the ultimate Jew, but he is. Why isn't the ultimate Jew the picture of Yeshua? He's not. So that's what we're going to eventually talk about. This one's mother was barren, that being Rebekah. So that one's mother was barren, Rachel. They were both barren. This one's mother bore 2, Jacob and Esau, and that one's mother bore 2, Joseph and Benjamin. Can you imagine sitting around and I say to you, why is the Bible written like that? And you just go, because of this, look at this, and 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 you just rattle them off like that? I just think this is amazing. I would love to be around these guys. This one's mother had difficulty giving birth. Remember, that's why Rachel went to seek the Lord. Why? Because the babies were fighting inside of her. And she goes, if I'm like this, why should I even live? And she goes and she seeks the Lord. Do you remember where? Anybody remember where? Very good. The tents of Shem and Ever. Very good. The tents of Shem and Ever. And she goes and she seeks God, and God tells her, here's why this is happening. Because she was in difficulty giving birth. Why she sought God about the birth. That one's mother had difficulty giving birth, and then she died doing it. Benjamin, when he was born at Migdal Eder, Rachel died. And that's where her grave is to this day. This one was hated by his brother, Esav, and that one was hated by his brothers, plural. So just like this one's brothers sought to kill him, Esav sought to kill him. That's in Genesis 27. Let's read that. Hey, I'm right there. Genesis 27:41. This is when Jacob steals the blessing, and he does steal it. So Esav bore a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esav said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are coming soon. His father's not dead. So what's he saying? Daddy going to die soon. That's when I'm going to go get my brother and kill him. The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Then the next verse. Now when the words of her elder son Esav were reported to Rivkah, she sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, look, your brother Esav he's making himself feel better by saying he's going to kill you. So run, get out. So he does. All right. This one was a shepherd. Now this is a big one. This one was a shepherd. Jacob was a shepherd. And that one was a shepherd. That's all he says. But this is huge. And by the way, when it said this, I was like, what? Yoseph was a shepherd? That's how the passage starts. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, 17 years of age, was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was a youth. But I didn't know if there was other verses that said that he was a shepherd. This is a big concept. This one was a shepherd. In other words, Jacob got all the animals of Laban. Do you remember how Jacob got all the animals of Laban? He peeled poplar branches, like peeled part of them, like so there would be bark, no bark, bark, no bark. And then he set them up, standing up against the feeding troughs, because he knew that the male and female goats, sheep, just goats and sheep, would go mate at the feeding trough. And somehow magically, peeling those poplar rods, which it says God showed him to do, magically changed the hereditary nature of the animals and made them all spotted, speckled, and striped. Because Jacob, before he did it, because God showed him, he went to Laban. He said, hey, Laban, I'll tell you what, you've been ripping me off for 20 years. I got nothing. Let me just take the nasty animals off your hands. And Laban goes, okay, sounds good to me. He says, okay, what I'll do is I'll just take the ones that are striped, speckled, and mottled. And so then because God showed him how to lie. Sorry, but that's how it is. Remember, you lie, you twist, you manipulate those who are evil only. And God does that with people. It says in 2 Samuel 22. We looked at that a few weeks ago. And then Jacob did it because God taught him how. So he manipulates this situation and ends up taking all of the flock because they all made it at the feeding trough, and so he got all the babies. And they all looked like the ones that he said he was going to take. That's how he became a shepherd. He stole all the flocks because God showed him how. Now, if that bothers you, oh well. That's how God is. You're going to have to really think about it. Why God is like that. So, from there he became Joseph's ability. What am I doing? He got all the animals of Laban, and that one a shepherd. Now, it says from there, from the shepherd, the stone of Israel, in Genesis 49. And I want to look at this also. These are the blessings that Jacob gave the 12 sons. And when he gets to Yosef, he says all this weird stuff that's hard to understand. So he's prophesying about Yosef in 49:24. We're going to start in 22. Joseph is a fruitful bough by a spring. Everybody likes that. Its branches run over a wall. Beautiful. The archers bitterly attacked him. When did archers bitterly attack Joseph? When did that happen? That's not recorded in the scriptures. Ah, very good. Very good. And shot at him and harassed him. And that's exactly what the rabbis say. The rabbis say, what is this? This is his brothers who saw him and shot their anger and hatred toward him. And they're making his gall in the liver their target. That's what it says in Hebrew. They made his gall their target. And so they're trying to take their bitterness, gall, and throw it on him. And that's described by God as archers bitterly attacking him, shooting him and harassing him. But his bow, whose bow? No, Joseph. This is talking about Joseph. It never says Joseph was a hunter with a bow or a fighter or a warrior with a bow. His bow remained firm. His arms were agile from the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. From where? From his arms that are mighty? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So he's describing Joseph as having strong arms and with a bow, and he's agile and he knows how to shoot the bow. From there came the mighty one of Israel, the shepherd. So here's what the rabbis say. There is his righteousness and his suffering. That's what the rabbis say. That from there, from his the things that he suffered, he learned to fight. Now, the other day, last week, I was with a couple of the guys in the congregation, and we were eating lunch, and I said, was Yeshua perfect? And it just, their heads exploded. And I said, Yeshua wasn't perfect. Nowhere in the scriptures does it say Yeshua was perfect. And they thought, and they came up with this verse and that verse and the other verse, and they really tried. They did pretty good. And I just sat there and waited, and I said, it's real simple. It says in Hebrews chapter 5, he learned submission by the things he suffered. And my question was, did he sin when he was a kid? Did he screw up when he was a kid? Did he have to be spanked? Yeah, he was a human being. He was a kid. He was a little Jewish boy. He was not perfect. Nowhere in the Bible does it say he was perfect. It says in Hebrews, he was made perfect to take the sin, period. That's all it says. That's all it says. That in the moment that he took the sin, he became perfect. So spiritually, he became perfect, but only for a second. That's it. But he had to learn submission like everybody else. And the things that he suffered, and I'm not talking about being beaten in the Garden of Gethsemane with big giant tears of blood, like, doe eyes, big doe eyes. Oh. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about through his life, he suffered, like every Jew suffers. And the rabbis say that Joseph's suffering made him perfect. And that was his rock. That was his ability to fight, to do spiritual warfare. And I really think that's true. I really think that's true. I know that I have not been a great model of that, but I'm trying. And only through the things that we suffer, that's what gives us the ability to do proper spiritual warfare. Only the things we suffer. Because then it gives you the ability to know a little bit about what God is thinking and what God is feeling. And so I know this is a huge concept here, but the words are weird. And if you just take the words at face value, you will miss what's being said. And so the rabbis clarify it. From there, because of Joseph's ability to withstand this trial, he merited to become the roe, a shepherd of the Jewish people. Who else was a shepherd of the Jewish people? Okay, who else? Moses, right, Moshe. Who else? There's only one other big one. He was a little shepherd boy. David, right. These are the three major leaders. They're called shepherds, roe in Hebrew. Roim of Israel is Yoseph, Moses, and David. But what gave them the ability to be a shepherd of Israel? Suffering. And so Yeshua followed in the same path. Does that make sense? That's what the rabbis say anyway. He merited to become a shepherd of the Jewish people, as it is stated. Now remember, these are the words of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman. As it is stated, listen, O shepherd of Israel, who leads like the flock of Joseph. Yes, that was in the song we sang today, in Psalm 80. Listen, O shepherd of Israel, who leads like the flock of Joseph. So in other words, if you've seen Yosef as a shepherd, you've seen who? Well, it doesn't say anything about Yeshua here. The shepherd of Israel. The shepherd of Israel. Who is it? It's God. It's God. And that's who Psalm 80 is talking about. It's talking about God as our shepherd. I know what you're thinking. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Okay, that's like, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the same guy, but described differently. From there, because of Joseph, he merited to become the shepherd, the roe of the Jewish people, as it is stated. Listen, O shepherd of Israel, who leads like the flock of Yosef. And who is that leading Israel? In this case, it's God, just like Yosef. Just like Yosef. I'm sorry, that was not the words of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman. That was from the Talmud Sota 36b. Sorry about that. At least this part about Psalm 80. Also, there's this also, to emphasize Joseph's righteousness. He was Joseph when he was the shepherd who watched his father's sheep. Now that's what Rashi says on Exodus 1. Okay, that's a big deal. To emphasize Joseph's righteousness is this. Now I read that, I don't get, it's so clear that Joseph is righteous. Do you? When you read, Joseph was 17 years of age, he was pasturing the flock with his brothers while he was a youth. Do you go, wow, he was so righteous? That's what Rashi got out of it. Isn't that weird? To emphasize Joseph's righteousness. He was Joseph when he was the shepherd who watched his father's sheep. He wasn't called something else. He was called Yosef, just like he was called Yosef later on when he suffered. So Rashi looks at this and he goes, well, he's called Yosef both times. And it starts the story calling him Yosef when he's shepherding. Ooh, look at that. He stays Yosef all the way through. That's what he's saying. He stays the same guy all the way through the story of all of his sufferings. You get what I'm saying? He was Yosef then and he's Yosef then. He's still Yosef, even though he went through all that. That's what he's saying. Take that or leave it, but that's what Rashi's saying. I think it's amazing. Then Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachman says this. This one was despised. Who was Jacob despised by? His brother Esav. And who else? Lavan, his father-in-law. Remember at the Passover Seder? How do we start the story? Do you remember how the story starts? In every generation, they've tried to kill us. But Lavan didn't want to just destroy the children. He wanted to destroy all the Jews, right? Well, that's how it starts, and that's important. But Lavan was a very, very wicked sorcerer. That one was despised, Yoseph. The archers were bitter. They shot arrows and despised him. Also, they set his gall as a target, as I told you. Do you understand what that means? There's a bunch of scriptures that say the archers went out and hit the deer in the liver, and its gall came forth, or something like that. It's talking metaphorically. It's speaking in picture form. And then it says, like David says, they shot their arrows at my liver to spill my gall. And it's talking about spiritual warfare. It's talking about, that's all I can call it, is spiritual warfare. It's not talking physically. They set his gall as a target, and they shot at him. The archers who hated and shot at Joseph alludes to Joseph's brothers who sold him into slavery. That's by Ibn Ezra. So you were right. That's exactly what it is. It's the same word. Lavan and Lebanon both mean white. Then Rabbi Shmuel says, this one was stolen twice, and that one was stolen twice. You would never get this in a million years. Never, never, never. I could not figure out. How was Jacob stolen from twice? Can you think of, like, who stole him twice? How did Lavan steal him? Well, that's ripping him off. Okay, that's what I thought. I thought, okay, he changed his wages 20 times. He ripped him off by giving him the wrong girl. That's what I thought. Not what it is. I would have never come up with this. This is what the rabbis say. Genesis 31:39 says, that Jacob says, I was stolen from both by day and by night. He's a shepherd. He's watching all these sheep, and people came and ripped him off by day and by night. Now, Jacob is a picture of God, yes? He's a shepherd over his sheep. Who's his sheep? Israel. And they were stolen by day and by night. That's the cycle of the sun and the cycle of the moon, by day and by night. This is what it's referring to. It's referring to the 4 captivities. Babylon, Medo-Persia, what's next? What's next? Greece, and then Rome. On the 4th day. It's referring to by day and by night, the turning of the sun, the turning of the moon, the history of all of Israel. The Jews are stolen by day and by night. This is what the rabbis say. I think that is amazing. To see that insight from Genesis 31:39, I would have never come up with this. This is when Jacob is saying, you've ripped me off for 20 years. He says, these 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried. I have not eaten the rams of your flock. That which was torn, I didn't bring to you. That means like wild animals, ripped up the animals. I didn't bring that back to you and say, here, pay me for this. I bore the loss of it myself. You required of my hand, stolen by day or stolen by night. Did you ever see that verse before? I never saw that. It's not talking about animals. It's talking about people coming and ripping him off by day and by night. So that's him being stolen. And the rabbi just says it like it's like common knowledge. This one was stolen twice, and that one was stolen twice. We know how Joseph was stolen twice, sold by his brothers to the Midianites or Ishmaelites or both or whatever, and sold by Midianites to Potiphar's house. This one had his bones taken up, and that one had his bones taken up. That's all he says. Did you know that? Jacob had his bones taken up to Israel at Hebron. Genesis 50 says that they, the whole giant entourage went all the way up to Canaan, to Israel, to take his bones to the cave of Machpelah. And they didn't stay in Israel, they went back to Egypt. Did you ever think of that? That they're free. They could have just bolted and run to Israel, but they didn't. They went back to Egypt. That one had his bones taken up to Israel. And we don't get to that until the end of the book of Joshua. It says in Exodus 15 that when they left Egypt, Moses took up the bones of Joseph, but that's all it says. That's all it says. And it doesn't say that they took him to Shechem in the middle of Israel until the end of the book of Joshua. That's when we finally get to it. So remember what I told you about Shechem? Right in the middle of Israel, and that's where the blessing and the curse was set. It's like the heart of Israel. And that's where Joseph's bones are. This one was blessed with wealth, and that one was blessed with wealth. That's all it says. Now I say, Jacob took all that was Laban's, like I told you about how he deceived Laban. He got all the animals, took everything. And this one was blessed with wealth. He became the wealthiest man in all of Egypt. How did he do that? He did it from a dream. He saw it in a dream. And he followed the dream, and it instructed him what to do, basically. And so he saved the whole world. But he ended up getting rich from it. This one went out of the land, Jacob. He was exiled to Haran, to Syria. Had to run from his brother. And that one went out of the land, exiled to Egypt. This one married a woman from outside the land, married Leah and Rachel. And I can't get this to work. Who did Jacob marry? Doesn't say she was a priestess. Who did Jacob marry? What was her name? Yoseph, sorry. Who did Yoseph marry? Starts with a P. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It starts with an A. I'm sorry. Very good. Asnat. It's written Asenath. Asnat. And that was Potiphar's daughter, which is weird because Potiphar is the one who took him and threw him into prison because his nasty wife accused him of trying to rape her. And yet, Joseph still married Potiphar's daughter. Isn't that interesting, though? I would have run for the hills. He didn't. He still married that woman. And don't think, they probably fell in love. That's not how things worked. Let's see. Where'd I go? Sefer Hayashah. This one was a source of blessings for his... Oh, no, I skipped this. This one was made great... No. I went forward so I wouldn't give away the punchline. I'm sorry. I don't know if I can go back. It's not doing it. Uh-oh. I don't know how to go back. All right, we'll just pick it up here. This one was made great through a dream at Hamakom. That's Joseph. What does that mean? He was made great through a dream at Hamakom. He was made great through a dream because he saw a ladder going up. How did that make him great? Well, how did the dream make him the leader of Israel? All it said was, he saw angels going up and down, and he said, "This is the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." How did that make him great? Because he became the one who planted the flag there and said, that's where the temple's going to go. That's the house of God. You look straight up, you see heaven. And that's where it all started. It all started with him. That made him great. He is I'm going to say it again. Jacob is the ultimate Jew. He's the ultimate Jew. My mom used to say, and this is bad, but, I think it's wise, what she used to say. But you're going to think it sounds bad. She would look at a guy and go, he's got the map of Jacob on his face. And then he'd look at a Gentile and say, she or he's got the map of the Goyim on their face. And it was like, God, you sound racist. And I used to get mad at her because she said it about one of my girlfriends. She's got the map of the Goyim on her face, and it really ticked me off. Later on, when I started learning the Bible, I was like, oh my God, that is so wise. The imprint of the Jew is on the Jew's face. And that's what you're going to see. The imprint of the Jew is on the Jew's face. Jacob was the ultimate Jew. So shouldn't Yeshua have that imprint on him? I'm not even going to repeat that on the mic. All right, and then that one was made great through a dream. His two dreams about the future, and then Pharaoh's dream that he interpreted made him great. This one, Jacob was a source of blessing for his father-in-law's house. And it says a lot about this, by the way. And the Lord gave to Laban wealth and honor and sons and daughters, and the man increased exceedingly for the sake of Jacob. That's what it says. Sefer HaYashar in the Midrash says that. And that one, Joseph was the source of blessing for his father-in-law's house. His father-in-law. Who's his father-in-law? Potiphar. And it says, when his Potiphar's wife accuses him of rape, he says, don't do this. Your husband has no lack of anything. He doesn't even have to lift a finger because I've taken care of everything in this house. Everything's in order, and God has blessed him because of me. And she goes, I don't care. I want to get it on. And day after day after day this went on, that he said, Potiphar lacks nothing because of me. And she kept coming on to him. But still true, Potiphar's house was blessed. This one went to Egypt, called by Yoseph and his sons. That's when Jacob went down. And that one went to Egypt, sold into slavery there. This one ended the famine. Now, did you know this, that as soon as Jacob went to Egypt, famine stopped? Did you know that? There were still 5 years of famine left, it says in the Bible. But it says in the Rashi and other writers, other sages, they say that as soon as Jacob came to Egypt, the famine ended and the waters of the Nile became plentiful. So now they had fish that they could eat the fish. But slowly the famine tapered off. It still lasted, the effects of it lasted another 5 years. But the second he crossed the border, and these were not the sages' words, guess whose words these were? Egypt's. Egypt said this. They said, in fact, a bunch of them converted to Judaism because the second that Jew crossed the border, all of a sudden everything changed. Now, you don't see that in the Bible, but you see it in the writings. So he ended the famine. And that one obviously ended the famine. He provided for the whole world to survive the 7 years. This one satisfied others, and that one satisfied others. In other words, they provided for everybody to survive. This one died in Egypt, and that one died in Egypt. You're aware of that, yes? That came up earlier when it said they were buried. They both had their bones taken up to Israel, yes? They had to be taken up to Israel because they died in Egypt. This is awful. This one was embalmed, and that one was embalmed. Embalming is not Jewish. Not the way the Egyptians did it. You know why? They gut the body. They take out the heart, heart, the liver, the lungs, the brain. They take out all the internal organs that are pictures to learn from, and they stick them in jars, and they embalm the body, and they wrap it like a mummy. That is not scriptural. It's horrible. Egypt gutted Israel. Egypt gutted Israel. Now the rabbis say, I believe it's 9/10 of Jews did not leave Egypt. 80%. Is it, what is it? 80. Thank you very much. 80%, 8/10. Is that right? 8/10 is 80%? 80%, 8 out of 10, I can't math today. 80%, thank you, of the Jews did not leave Egypt. Why? Idolatry. They loved the idolatry. They loved it. They loved it. It was very, very spiritually dark. And the Jews loved it. And so they stayed. Egypt gutted, took the guts out of the body of Israel. That's why God wanted to get them out of there. And only 20% of them left. Only 20% of the Jews left. 600,000 men. That was only 20%. And a lot of Gentiles with them, yeah. It's not good, is it? Well, that's coming again. Same exact thing is happening now, where the body of Israel is being gutted of Judaism. That's embalming. And it happened to both Israel and Yoseph, the Messiah, the picture of the Messiah. So he no longer looks like a Jew. Here's where it started. It didn't start with Antiochus Epiphanes. It didn't start with Alexander the Great. It didn't start with Constantine or whatever. It started all the way back here. That one, Yoseph, was embalmed. He's the picture of the Messiah. And he looks exactly like Jacob. So much so that they couldn't tell him apart. I'm going to show you that. And if you think about Yeshua, the Messiah, he should look like that. But he's been gutted. And now he's Christmas trees. It's all gone. This one had his bones taken up to the land, Hebron and Machpelah, and that one had his bones taken up to Shechem. So, if you haven't seen this, you haven't seen anything, that Joseph equals Jacob. Why does it say that in the Bible? Toledot. These are the generations of Jacob, Joseph. Why? To tell us that everything that happened to Jacob happened to Joseph. They are the same guy. You can lay them one on top of the other and they look exactly the same. Their life matched exactly the same. That's why it says that. Isn't that amazing? All that from 4 words. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph equals Jacob. Whoop. You look at Joseph, you see Jacob. Now look at this. This is what it says in Genesis Rabbi. Joseph's features resemble Jacob's, and whatever happened to Jacob happened to Joseph. His features resembled Jacob's. He got the map of the Jew all over his face. He got the map of Jacob on his face. They looked the same. There's even more than that, which we're going to get to in a minute. I'm not going to read all these. We'll be here all day. I want you to see this, though. This is from Midrash Tanhuma on Vayigash. And it says, observe that every misfortune that occurred to Joseph likewise befell Zion. Who's Zion? Who's Zion? All those are right. Jacob, Israel, Jerusalem. They're all Zion. And he goes through all these verses in the Bible that he does quote and were written down. I'll just pick a couple. Let's see. To Joseph, for behold, we are binding sheaves. And to Zion, you shall come home with song bearing sheaves. Look at this list. He just said this and this, this and this. Could you do that? Have you ever heard a Christian do this? Jacob, without studying for 10 hours.
No.
Yeah, with the not without a teleprompter, yeah. Well, I can't do it without studying for 10 hours. I have to study this for 10 hours to do this. Jacob is Joseph. Jacob is Joseph. Now it's Jacob is Zion. Jacob is Zion. Jacob is Zion. Jacob is Zion. Or Yoseph is Zion. Yoseph is Zion. Yoseph. And they do it like this. These should be our teachers. These should be the guys that we emulate. Oh, that's that Jewish stuff. That's that Jewish writing. Oh, how about this one? And they hated him, Yosef. And about Zion, she has uttered her voice against me, against God. Therefore I, God, have hated her. That's about God. To Joseph, for behold, we are binding sheaves. And to Zion, you shall come home with song bearing sheaves. Look at this one. To Joseph, shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down to you? To Zion, they shall bow down to you with their faces to the earth. And he did these off the top of his head. And he just related everything about Yosef to Israel, to Zion, to Jerusalem. Now, you look at all this, and then you think about Christians go, we are Israel. Think about this. It's so thin. You have mounds and mounds and mounds of proof that God loves Israel and that God has never done with Israel and that Israel is like the template upon which everything is built. And to say, we're Israel. The church is Israel. You can see how flaccid and flimsy that is. Because these guys would just quote things from all over the Bible like this. Isaiah, Psalm, Genesis, Isaiah, Zechariah, Jeremiah, Genesis, Isaiah, Joel. And that's the one I want to look at. I only want to look at the last one, really. Look at this, the last one. To Joseph, and the Midianites sold him into Egypt. And the rabbi says to Zion, the children of Jerusalem, you have sold to the sons of the Greeks. So the template of selling Joseph to Egypt is in the day of the Lord, because that's what it says in Joel, twice. It says, in that day, in the day of the Lord, you have sold the sons of Israel, of Jerusalem, to the Greeks. And that's what's happened. Jews have been sold into Hellenism. And guess who it is in the passage who does the selling in Joel? What's your best guess? Who sold Israel to Hellenism? Who do you think it says? God? No. Jerusalem? No. Who? Judah? No. Keep trying. Whoever it is took the Jews and sold them into Hellenism. Close. No. Philistines. The Philistines. Philistia. Palestinians. The Palestinians took the Jews and sold them into Hellenism. I don't know if you know this, but during World War II, all the Arab nations that gathered together to destroy Israel, They did that after World War II, right? They did it during World War II with the Nazis. Did you know that? That the Nazis met with all the leaders of the Arab nations to destroy the Jews? Nothing new under the sun. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. So, obviously, Joseph equals Zion. Zion is Israel. You look at Joseph, you see Zion. You look at Joseph, you see Israel, right? Got the map of Jacob all over his face. Pretty simple. Now look at this. It didn't start with them. It started with Abraham. Isaac looked like Abraham. Did you know that? There's midrashim that say that God changed Isaac's face to make him look exactly like Abraham. So they were indistinguishable one from the other. Joseph looked like Jacob, indistinguishable one from the other. But in the Bible, the son always looks like the father. This is nothing new. This thing about Abraham and Isaac says this: what did the Holy One, blessed be he, do? He shaped Isaac's facial features exactly similar to those of Abraham's, so that everyone had to admit that Abraham begot Isaac. Why? Because this was with Abimelech, and Isaac, he saw Isaac, making out with his wife, Rebecca, and he's like, "You've lied to us." And so everybody was saying, "Oh, Sarah, when she went with Abimelech, he had sex with her, and that kid is from Abimelech." And so God changed Isaac's face to make him look exactly like his father. So everybody had to admit, yeah, this guy had a baby at the age of 100. So that's where that's coming from. That's in Genesis Rabbah 84. Now look at this. Look at this. Daniel, you're going to love this. The numerical value of the letters in the word holid, which means to give birth to, is equivalent to the numerical value of the word duma, which means a look-alike. Everybody looks like their parents. Everybody, right? Generally, right? Generally, you take two guys, you mix them together, two guys. Take a girl and a guy, you mix them together, you get something that looks like both of them. But in the scriptures, God took it a step further, and he changed their face to look exactly like generation after generation after toldot after toldot after toldot, so that if you look at Abraham, you see Isaac. If you look at Isaac, you see Jacob. If you look at Jacob, you see Joseph. We're not doing that. So, it's just like teaching middle school with you, I swear to God. But I like it. I like it. That's why I do it. All right, so it's just a real simple construct that you look at the son, you see the daddy. Very, very simple construct. That's right. That's what Yeshua said. And here it is. John 12:45, and then John 14:7 and 14:9. He said, "The one who sees me sees him who sent me. If you had known me, you would have known him, my Father. From now on, you do know him because you've seen him. You're looking at him, baby." And I know what he's saying. He's quoting Judaism. And the Jews know what he's saying. They're saying, yeah, you're right. Abraham looked exactly like Isaac. Isaac looked like Jacob. Jacob looked like Joseph. We get it. You know him because you're looking at him. Yeshua said to him, "Have I been so long with you, and yet you still haven't come to know me, Philip? The one who has seen me has seen the daddy." Remember? Oh, yeah, I forgot. How can you say, "Show us the Father"? I really like that. How are you going to say to me, "Show us the Father"? Dude, come on. How are you going to say that to me? You've seen my daddy because you've seen me. This is a very, very Jewish concept. So why doesn't Yeshua look like the map of Jacob on his face? Well, now we're back to Hellenism. And it was all planned out. All right, and we're not going to look at all these verses either, don't worry. This is that Joseph is just like the Messiah, Yeshua. So we've seen that Joseph is just like Jacob, and we've seen that Joseph is just like Zion. Now we have that Joseph is just like Messiah, Yeshua. And I'm just going to pick a couple of these. Sold for silver to the Gentiles. Genesis 37:28. Joseph was sold for how much? 20. Very good. 20 pieces of silver. And Yeshua in Matthew 26 was sold for how much? 30 pieces of silver. All right? Stop it. I would love to do it. I just no time, dude. A root out of dry ground. Now, this is an interesting one. It says in Isaiah 53, it starts out by saying, he grew up as a root out of dry ground. That means like a little plant that comes up out of something, a ground that you think isn't going to grow anything. How's that like Joseph? How is Joseph like a root out of dry ground? No. Where did he come from? Who did he come from? Jacob. He says, I love Joseph the best. Why? Because he's the son of my old age. That's a dry ground. Just like Isaac was the son of dry ground for Abraham. Yeah? It just repeats the pattern. And so Yeshua, the same thing. Yeshua was a root out of dry ground. He came up out of dead Israel. Israel that's dead, that's spiritually garbage. That's what he came up out of. Yes? You follow what I'm saying? He came up in Israel with all this religious and horrible crap that made them want to kill the Messiah. Well, that's what it's talking about. Stripped of his clothing, that's obvious. He was stripped of the garment that belonged to Adam. And Yeshua, he was stripped of his garments to repeat that picture. It wasn't so they could gamble. It was so they could repeat that picture. All right. You probably know all the rest. So, I say, if you've seen Joseph, you've seen Jacob. If you've seen the Son, you've seen the Father. If you're part of Ephraim or Joseph is Ephraim, you should look like Jacob. You should have the map of Jacob on your face. Now, here's why I have this. Because growing like a fire in dry brush is this disgusting, evil doctrine that all the Gentiles who are coming into Messianic Judaism is really Ephraim. It's really the 10 tribes. You didn't know? You've never heard this? This is growing like crazy since about 1995, right around there. But now, oh my God, it's crazy what's on the internet. It's crazy how it's growing. That all the Gentiles who are coming in are Ephraim. Like the Jews are Judah. Well, who's Ephraim? All the others who are coming in. The Gentiles. What tribe are you from? Figure out what tribe you're from. And so they have all these conferences on figuring out what tribe you're from. And they categorize it like tribe of Asher is this and this and this and this. Tribe of Issachar is this and this and this. You need to pick what tribe. You need to figure out, discern by the Holy Spirit what tribe you're from. That's what the way they say it. So I just want to let you know that in the Bible, Jew, Israel, Zion, Ephraim are all synonymous words throughout the whole Bible, from beginning to end. They're all synonymous. So this dude that everybody says they believe in, and then they do this, Christmas, this is who they purport to believe in. Why doesn't he look like this? Like a Jew. Like this. Now this is Yoseph, and he's looking in the mirror, and he sees his daddy. So, if you've seen Yoseph, you've seen Jacob. If you've seen the son, you've seen the father. If you're part of Joseph or Ephraim is Joseph, you should look like Judah. That doesn't mean physically you're going to look like a Jew, but physically you're going to look like a Jew. Where you wear all the Jew garb, do all the Jew stuff, you end up looking like a Jew to the world. That's what it says in Romans, doesn't it? That the Gentiles who do the law end up looking like the circumcised to the uncircumcised. Doesn't it say that? They end up looking like a Jew to the world? Doesn't it say that in your New Testament? Yes? You look blank. I'm a Jew. I'm quoting New Testament to you. You're supposed to know this. It says in Romans 5 that the Gentile who does the law, who does Judaism, ends up looking like a Jew to the world. Got it that time? That's what it says. That's what it's saying. If you've seen Yoseph, you've seen Jacob. If you've seen the son, you've seen the father. If you're part of Ephraim, which is Yoseph, you should look like Jacob, Israel. Do Jew stuff so you can look like your daddy. Make sense? Okay. That's about as simple as I can make it. One last thing. I taught this 2 years ago. This is amazing. This is amazing, amazing, amazing. Last week, when Jacob returned from Haran, and his father-in-law Lavan, and he ends up at the river Yavok, and he goes face to face with God, and God changes his name from Jacob to Yisrael. Yeah? He's left all alone. He's hit. That's why we only eat half a cow. Hit in the hip, in the Gid Hanasheh. That's why we only eat half a cow. And the next day, he has to face his brother Esav. And Esav is coming with 400 men. And he doesn't know how Esav is coming. But he says, "Oh, Esav, I see your face like the face of God." That's how it's translated. Not what it says in Hebrew. It says, Jacob is afraid to see his brother Esav, so he sends him a present, and this is what he says. "Then afterward I will see his face. Perhaps he will be gracious." Not what it says in Hebrew. It says, "Er'e panav, ulai yisa paneh." Er'a panav, seen his face, er'e panav, his face. Ulai, and literally the only way to translate it is perhaps. Perhaps, maybe, yasa, to be pani, my face. Maybe in my brother's face, I'll see my face. Who's his brother? Rome. Christianity. Maybe, ulai, maybe I'll get to see the map of the Jew, the map of Jacob on Esau's face. Maybe. It's a big maybe. Well, that could be a good thing. That means that maybe some will. Yes? Does that make sense to you? Think about what Yeshua said. When Yeshua returns to the earth, not Christ, Yeshua, the Jew guy. When the Jew guy comes back to the earth, he says, maybe will I find what? Faith. The faith on the earth. Well, what's the faith? Judaism. And so he's saying, maybe, ulai, I'll find in my people the map of the Jew on their face. Maybe. Does that make sense? Now, the only way that's going to happen is if we work to destroy Hellenism. It's the only way it's going to happen. Then afterward, in the day of the Lord, perhaps I will see his face as my face. Maybe I'll see his face, my face in his face. Maybe. I mean, that's very hopeful to me. You know, at least I'll take it, man. Maybe. I'll take a maybe. Yeah? I'll take that. Gives me some hope. And here's the dividing line. It must be one or the other. It cannot be both. It can't be. You can't have both faces on the face at the same time. You can't have Christ on the face and Yeshua, the Messiah, on the face at the same time. It is literally impossible. So, you got to dump one and take the other. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to encourage you. Yes, you can't be two-faced. I should have thought of that. That's good. That sounds like you. Did you say that? Oh, way to go, Doug. You pulled a good one. So, you can't be two-faced. You got to be one face or the other face. And this should encourage you that it's a process. It takes time. And you're going to have to keep working at it and working at it. Look, I've been doing this for 37 years, working at it. I feel pretty confident in it, but I'm a Jew. It's easier for me, I think. Although it is not easy for me to dump the Hellenism that's among Jewish people. It's not easy. It's just as hard for me to do that amongst Messianic Jews and Hebrew Christians and Jews, regular Jews. Jews who aren't believers. It's hard. So, it is possible. It takes time, but it's possible. But you have to work at it. You got to work at it for it to get rid of that face of Christ so that you no longer desire to be Christ-like. Now, right now, as we're rolling up to Christmas time, baby, now is when it gets tough. You know what one of the worst things is? You're going to hate me for this. Parades. I used to say back when early on in our marriage, I used to tell Eileen, I always get a foul attitude in December. It's coming early. Hanukkah comes really early. We're in November. But I always get a foul attitude around December because it's just like this oppressive regime on my head, and I can't get away from it. It's everywhere. I used to always say to Eileen, all Thanksgiving is a prelude to Christmas. That's all it is. And at first she didn't like it, and we would argue, and then she started seeing it a little bit, got a little easier, and I mean, it's kind of common knowledge, but I'm sure most of you see that. But parades are the worst because they're fun and they're frilly and everybody's involved in one way or another. And there's music and there's marching and there's bands and there's floats and there's costumes and there's girls walking down in the freezing cold weather in their little mini skirts and throwing batons and it's a blast. It is the most dangerous Hellenistic thing. And it's hard not to like it. It's hard not to, it's just like Halloween. It's hard not to want that candy. But this is worse because it involves everything. It's a real all-encompassing kind of deal. So it's rough. So I would encourage you to find a way to try to see past the surface level and think about the suffering of the Jewish people while you're watching a parade. Let's talk about the Holocaust while you're watching a parade. Or something. You got to find some way. I know that sounds stupid, right? You got to find some way to think about the Jewish connection while you're in this immersive experience. And it is a 4D immersive experience.
I see when the victors of a war would always parade their captives.
That is correct. I was actually going to go there, so thank you very much. Do you know where the whole concept of the parade came from? From Rome. The Romans would parade their victims from all over the world. And on the Arch of Titus, the Roman emperor that destroyed the temple, it's called the Arch of Titus in Rome. Big giant thing. It has a picture of the Romans carrying the menorah from the temple. That was one of their biggest parades in Judah, when Judah was destroyed. Yehuda Capta, or Judea Capta. When the Jewish people were destroyed, they paraded all of what was left of Jerusalem through those streets in Rome. One of the biggest parades that ever existed. And it was like after the city wins the Super Bowl or whatever, and they have the big ticker tape parade with all the confetti falling, and they're all in the cars. Yeah, we won. It was like that. So I know it sounds stupid, but you got to find some way when you're in the midst of this immersive experience of Christmas, Thanksgiving to Christmas, that whole trip. You got to find some way to connect in your heart to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, to get their face on our face. Does that make sense? I know I'm speaking metaphorically, but you got to find some way to get yourself put into that mold that God has created for us, that template that God has created for us. Okay? Good.
More is my bitterness. So Merry Christmas, bitter Christmas.
I got to get that on tape. Mary Mar is in Hebrew. Well, Mar is bitterness, and so you're basically saying bitter Christmas. Bitter Christmas. Mary is Mar. Yep. I like it. Yes, ma'am?
Do you think that the COVID has been one vehicle that God has given us?
Do I think that COVID has been one vehicle to get us to stop? That's all I'm going to say. No, I like that. To stop. Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? There's going to be something after COVID that's going to do even worse. Yeah, it's never going to go away. But there's going to be something else that's worse. I don't know what that is, but it's going to be worse. So, who cares? What label you put on it, who cares? Who cares? It's always going to be something that the Jewish people have to face to get over into the kingdom. We got to get over that hump to get into the kingdom, and we're going to have to do it together, and there's always going to be something. But right now, I want to focus on the happy party time. How do you get over that hump? It's hard. COVID's easy because it's hard. Christianity's hard because it's easy. And it's fun, and it's frilly, and it's, a lot of food and stuff like that. Oh my God, did we have an experience the other day? We went, my family, my brother Dean and his daughter and my mom and my family, we went to a restaurant that's right by I can't remember what the name of the Honey Ham place. What's it called? Honey Baked Ham. That's what it's called? Okay. Honey Baked Ham. There was a line stretching down the block next to Savers to get a Honey Baked Ham for Thanksgiving and then for Christmas. That is a whole long, I could teach on that for 10 hours. The big long story about why Christians eat ham at Christmas. It is a long, long story. Comes from paganism. But anyway, I want you to find some way to deal with the happy times, not the hard times. That's why you'll never hear me say, in these difficult times. Because it's always difficult for the Jew. Always. But the worst time is when it's a happy time. That's the worst time. All right, I think I've gone as far as I can go. So let's pray over this one. Lord, thank you so much for giving us pattern after pattern, template after template, picture after picture. And they lay one right on top of the other so perfectly. And we're so ignorant of it. I ask that you'd open our eyes to see it and to understand it. It's been there in Judaism all these many, many centuries. And Lord, I ask that your Spirit would pour out the spirit of grace and supplication, begging on your body, not just on Israel, but on your body that's supposedly part of Israel, so that they would look on you whom we have pierced. That we would look on you whom we have pierced. And I ask, Father God, that your Holy Spirit would show us Yeshua and destroy the image of Christ. Destroy the imagery of the Greek Christ in your body. I know it's going to take time. I know that there are many, many, many people working at it. And I ask that you'd bless every one of them. Bless every one of them who are working to shatter that idol. In the name of Yeshua, I thank you, Father, for your Holy Spirit and your Torah, which are one. I ask that you'd braid them together in your body. In the name of Yeshua. Amen. Let's stand for the Aleinu. Let's stand for the Aleinu. Aleinu לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. Let us adore the Lord of all, who in greatness created the world from of old, that he has not made us like the nations of the earth, not made us like the families of the land. He has not made our destiny like theirs, or cast our lot with all of them. Let's stop there. Shabbat Shalom.